Have you ever watched demolitions experts implode a building? Kind of an impressive sight, you know. 1 minute the building's there and the next it's gone. Just a pile of rubble. And of course that can happen in other ways too. You've seen the pictures of the Zion Lutheran Church in Delmont. You know, I can't count the number of times growing up that I drove by that church. Stood for 100 years. A few weeks ago, you'd have thought it was going to stand for 100 more years. Now it's all gone, taken down by a tornado. And of course, right here in Oneida this week, we saw them take down the Sully Buttes High School that had stood for so long. It'll be replaced by a new one, but still, it's just kind of amazing that a couple of weeks ago, you'd have thought that building could last a long time, and now it's gone. You know, one of the truisms of life is that it's much easier to tear down, to destroy, than it is to build. That brings us to our paradoxical commandment for today. As many of you know, this is a sermon series we've been doing. It's based on a set of 10 statements, I guess we should say, by Dr. Kent M. Keith. It was endorsed by Mother Teresa. We have the complete list in the back of the church. Today's statement is, what you spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Build anyway. Our reading from Jeremiah told of the destruction of the first temple of Jerusalem. Now, the first temple of Jerusalem was an incredible thing. It was amazing. It was built of cedar. The walls and the floors were overlaid with gold. Many of the decorations were made with gold too. There was silver in it. There was bronze in it. There is no way we could even begin to measure the cost of everything that went into building that first temple. Could never do it today. Be impossible. It took 7 years to build that. It was the most incredible structure that had ever been built. The first temple of Jerusalem stood for hundreds of years. Then came the events we read about in Jeremiah. King of Babylon came and sent an army, and they destroyed Jerusalem. Included in that destruction was the first temple. Everything was destroyed. The most beautiful, incredible building there had ever been was gone in almost no time at all. And of course, the people of Israel were pretty much destroyed too. You heard about that. Most of them, all the people that the king of Babylon thought were worth taking, were taken to Babylon. The other ones were left in Jerusalem. They were kind of the poorest of the poor people. They were left behind to work the fields, work the vineyards. And 70 years passed. There were very few people left who even remembered the temple or even remembered living in Jerusalem at all. Then, amazingly, they were allowed back. Persia took over Babylon. The king of Persia sent the people of Israel back and gave them specific instructions that they were supposed to rebuild that temple. The people could hardly believe it. There was an answer to all of their prayers. Incredible answer. But think of the faith that it took for the people of Israel to do this. First, it took faith over those 70 years that they were in Babylon for the people of Israel to keep praying, to keep hoping, to keep trusting that God would allow them someday to return to Jerusalem. After all, 70 years is a long time. Their life in Jerusalem really had become just kind of a story, something that grandparents told to their grandchildren. It was not that something that most of them had ever experienced, and even the ones who had, they were, the memories were getting pretty fuzzy after 70 years. They had no reason to think that they'd ever be able to go back there, that they ever would experience living in Jerusalem. It took a lot of faith to believe that the return to Jerusalem was not just a dream, that it was not just a fairy tale, it was never going to come true. And then it took a lot of faith to actually go back to Jerusalem. For one thing, that was not an easy trip. But for another thing, think of what they were doing. Yeah, Jerusalem was home in a way, but not really. Most of them, again, had never actually lived there. And the world changes a lot in 70 years. People's lives change a lot in 70 years. We get used to things. We get settled in our ways. We don't necessarily want to make a big change after all that time. People had houses and jobs and families there in Babylon. They had no idea what they'd find when they went back to Jerusalem. It took a lot of faith for them to go back there and start their lives over again. And when they did go back, it took a lot of faith for them to actually rebuild the temple. You know, they built it once, built it incredibly, and it was all destroyed. How'd they know it would not be destroyed again? I mean, yeah, the king of Persia was allowing them to do that. In fact, was encouraging them to do it. But how'd they know Persia would stay in control? Persia hadn't been in control that long yet. Besides, this king, King Cyrus, was not going to live forever. How'd they know what the next king would think about this? He might order the temple destroyed again. It took a lot of faith on the part of the people of Israel to build the second temple. But you know, it takes a lot of faith to build anything when you think about it. Because none of us knows what the future is going to be like. It took a lot of faith for people to build this church many years ago. So they did not know what was going to happen. People who built it did not know how long the building would last, did not know how long the church would last. People who built it did not know how long the town would last, for that matter. It takes faith. It's faith that made this church possible. It's faith that makes it still possible for this church to continue. It's faith that makes it possible for us to build things when we don't know what the future holds. It takes faith in God. And it takes faith in each other. And it takes faith in the generations to come, too. And we know, just as the people of Israel knew, that anything we build could be gone in an instant. That's not just true of buildings either. It takes faith to build anything. Anything we build could be destroyed in an instant. Because again, it's always easier to destroy than it is to build. It takes faith to build a marriage, right? Now, I mean, we all know how prevalent divorce is these days. And please, if you are divorced, this is not a criticism of you. I'm not making a judgment on you. That happens for a lot of reasons. It's always painful. I'm not trying to pass any judgment here. But, you know, no one, when they get married, does it with the idea that they're going to get divorced at some point. We get married with the idea that we're going to stay together the rest of our lives. When we say till death do us part, that's what we have in mind when we get married. And that's an act of faith. Because we don't know that we're actually going to be able to do that. I did not know I'd be able to do that. I hoped so. I prayed for it. I planned for it. But I did not know for sure. And I don't think Wanda really knew for sure either. I mean, I'm pretty confident now. She's put up with me for over 25 years. Doesn't seem to be making any plans to leave, so I'm pretty confident now. But at the time, who knew? It was an act of faith.
You never know.
But it's an act of faith, because there are a lot of things that can destroy a marriage. A decision to build one is an act of faith.
I think you're stuck with me.
Well, I hope so. I think you said that backwards. I think you're the one who's stuck with me. But it takes faith. It takes faith to build a family. You know, nobody knows whether they're going to be any good at being a mother or father until they actually do it. And I don't think anybody feels real confident when it first happens that they're going to know exactly what to do or how to do it. And even if you do turn out to be a good parent, there are all kinds of unknowns. Will you have enough money to provide for your family? What happens if you lose your job? What happens if you lose your health? What happens if your kids have serious health problems? What if they turn out to have behavioral problems, have problems in school? Who knows what the world's going to be like when they grow up? You know, there are all kinds of things that can destroy a family too. It takes faith to decide to build one. It takes faith to build anything. It takes faith in ourselves. It takes faith in others. And it takes faith in God. Not building anything is easy. It takes no faith at all to not build something. And you know, we can always find reasons not to. It's like what we said a couple of weeks ago about ideas. There are always 25 reasons not to do something. If our goal is to find one of those reasons, we'll always be able to. But it's only through building things that we move forward. And it's only through building things that we can serve God. And that's true whether we're talking about a building, or a marriage, or a family, or a relationship, or anything else. We cannot serve God by not trying to do anything. We cannot serve God by not building things. We only serve God by building them. We need to build carefully, of course. The people of Israel did not just walk out one day and start slapping pieces of wood together. We need to talk about what we're going to do. We need to talk about how we're going to do it. We need to talk about what the best way is to do it. But at some point, we need to go beyond talking. Because nobody ever built a building or a marriage or a family or a relationship just by talking about it. At some point, we have to take that leap of faith and actually build it. And we do so knowing that what we are building could be destroyed in an instant. And there may be nothing we can do about it. What we spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Build anyway. Have the faith to build. Yes, it is taking a chance. Yes, what we build could be destroyed. But build it anyway. Build a church. Build a marriage. Build a family. Build a relationship. Have faith in God. It's the only way we can move forward. It's the only way that you and I can serve God. Amen.